The screaming began at 3 a.m., exactly too sharp to be a nightmare, too desperate to be routine. Damian Morello was awake in his office when it happened, sitting in the dark with a spreadsheet of port routes on one screen and a silent security dashboard on the other. The dashboard should have shown green, cameras active, motion sensors steady, guards checking in every 15 minutes. Instead, half the cameras were black. Then his daughter screamed again. Damien's hand went into the desk drawer and closed around a Glock he kept there for the nights when the city remembered his name. He didn't bother with shoes. He didn't bother with lights. He moved into the corridor like a man walking into his own judgment, counting the seconds between screams the way other fathers counted bedtime stories. When Sophia was alive, their penthouse had been warm at night. Her laugh had filled the marble hallway like music that didn't care about who Damien was outside these walls. 8 months ago, a car bomb meant for him turned her into a closed casket and turned their 6-year-old twins into fragile, haunted versions of themselves. Mateo stopped speaking except in whispers that barely existed. Eliana woke every night at 3 a.m., screaming like fire was crawling up her throat. Damien tried to buy solutions. Therapists, specialists, a private sleep clinic that promised trauma repatterning. Nothing stopped the hour. Nothing stopped the terrors. 7 nannies quit, cried, stole, or broke. Damien fired the ones who looked at his children like they were already ruined. He didn't want pity for his bloodline. He wanted resilience. 2 weeks ago, he hired Nora Lane because she didn't pity them. She arrived from a London agency that didn't advertise and didn't exist online. She wore a plain gray coat and thick-rimmed glasses. Her hair was pulled into a tight knot that made her face look smaller, softer, harmless. She didn't stare at the armed guards or the biometric locks. She didn't ask what kind of work Damien did. She only asked one question, quietly, like a doctor asking about pain. Do they sleep better when you're with them? Nora had asked. Damien didn't like the question. They don't sleep, he'd said coldly. They endure. So do I. Nora had nodded once. Then we start with endurance, she said. And we build up. For 2 weeks, she became the upstairs calm. When Eliana woke screaming, Nora didn't call Damien. She went to the nursery and sat between the twin beds, speaking softly, guiding breath, pressing small feet to the floor, asking them to name 5 things they could see until panic loosened its grip. Damien watched through cameras more than once, feeling resentful that his children leaned toward her voice the way they couldn't lean toward his. Tonight, those cameras were dead. Damien reached the children's corridor and found the first body before he heard the intruders. One of his night guards lay half-hidden near the linen closet, throat open with a clean slice, radio smashed beside his hand. Damien's mind went cold, slipping into the ruthless clarity that had kept him alive in wars that never reached the news. Eliana screamed again, then the sound cut off. Damien sprinted the last stretch and kicked the nursery door wide, gun raised, expecting a man with a rifle, expecting blood on toys. He found a scene that didn't make sense. A tall man in tactical black was on his back on the alphabet rug, convulsing weakly. Straddling him was Nora. Her glasses lay, shattered, near the toy chest. Her hair had come loose, dark strands falling over her cheek. In her right hand, she held a slim black blade buried to the hilt at the side of the man's neck, exactly where artery and vein met. Her left hand covered his mouth, muffling the wet, choking sounds as his life drained out. Behind her, Mateo and Eliana were huddled together by their beds, clutching each other, eyes wide with shock. Nora wasn't looking at the man she was killing. She was looking at the children. Breathe with me, she murmured, voice steady and warm, as if she were coaxing them back from a dream. Then, hold. Oh. Mateo's lips moved soundlessly, matching her rhythm. Eliana trembled, but the scream stayed trapped in her chest, kept there by Nora's calm. The intruder's body twitched once more and went slack. Nora held the blade in place for 3 seconds longer, professional and exact. Then, as she withdrew it with a wet sound, wiped it on the dead man's vest, folded it shut with a sharp click, and slipped it into her cardigan pocket. Only then did she turn to Damien. Her eyes were not mousy, not meek. They were sharp, calculating, and terrifyingly clear. Your cameras are looped, she said, calm as if she were reporting a broken window. Your phone is jammed, and whoever sent him didn't come for you. Damien's gun remained trained on her center mass, but his gaze flicked to his children. "Are you hurt?" he asked them, voice tight. Matteo shook his head, silent. Eliana clutched his sleeve hard enough to wrinkle it. Nora took one step back, palms open, giving Damian a clean line to them. "They came for your son," she continued. "This was a scout. The breach team is already inside your building." Damian's stomach dropped. "How do you know?" Nora's head tilted slightly, listening beyond the nursery walls. "Because your security didn't fail by accident," she said. "It failed by permission." A heavy thud hit the hallway outside, then another slow, confident boots. Someone tried the nursery handle, testing it. Damian's jaw clenched. "Marco," he spat, the name of his head of security tasting bitter. "Marco," Nora agreed. "Or someone who can order him." The nursery door shuddered under a hard impact. Wood creaked. Eliana whimpered, and Nora's voice softened instantly without losing control. "Matteo," she said gently, "hold your sister's hand. Count your breaths." Matteo's whisper finally formed, hoarse and thin. 1, 2. Damian's chest tightened at the sound. His son's voice, fighting its way out. Nora looked at Damian, and for the first time her calm carried urgency. "Take them," she said. "Closet panel." "No. If they see Matteo's face, they won't leave without him." Another dar hit the door. The lock began to splinter. Damian scooped both children into his arms, their small bodies shaking against him, and followed Nora toward the closet as the nursery door started to crack open like a mouth. Nora yanked the closet door open and swept aside the small hangers with a motion too practiced to be instinct. Behind the jackets, a panel sat flush with the wall, painted the same cream as the molding. Damian had never noticed it. He owned the penthouse, yet it felt like he was discovering it for the first time while his children shook in his arms. "Feet under you," Nora told Matteo softly. "Hold your sister." Then, to Eliana, "Count your breaths with me." 1, 2. Eliana's lips trembled, but she followed. Damian felt her tiny ribs expanding against his forearm, desperate, alive. Nora pressed a hidden latch. The panel clicked and swung inward, revealing a narrow service shaft lined with brick and old steel. Cold air spilled out, smelling of dust and concrete. Damian stared at it like it was a mouth. "How do you know this is here?" he demanded, keeping his Glock trained toward the nursery door, listening to it splitting. Nora didn't look at him. "Because your wife asked me to know," she said. "Move." The nursery door crashed inward behind them. A voice barked in Italian, irritated. "Closet." "No." Heavy boots crossed the rug. A hand yanked hangers aside. Damian stepped into the shaft with the twins pressed to his chest. Nora slipped in after him and pulled the panel shut. The nursery sounds dulled, muffled by brick and distance. In the dark, Eliana's breath hitched into panic. Nora's hand found her wrist gently. "Stay with me," Nora whispered, voice low and warm. Then, "Hold." Oh. Eliana obeyed. Matteo's whisper joined, thin and hoarse. 1, 2, 3. Damian's throat tightened. His son's voice had been buried for months, and fear had clawed it out. They descended a steep metal ladder into a narrow corridor lit by a single emergency strip. Above them, the closet panel rattled as someone shoved it. A muffled curse. Then a hard metallic slam like a boot meeting steel. "They found it," Damian hissed. "They expected it," Nora corrected. She moved ahead, one hand on the wall, counting steps under her breath like a map was written into her muscles. "They're not improvising. They're following a plan." At the corridor's end, Damian's panic room door waited, reinforced steel, biometric lock, the one place he had told himself would never fail. Nora pressed Damian's thumb to the scanner. The light flashed red. Access denied. Damian slammed his palm against the panel. "Override." Nora's eyes narrowed. "Administrative lockout," she said. "Someone inside your system has master access. They didn't just steal codes. They were given them." "Marco," Damian spat. Nora's gaze flicked toward the ceiling, as if she could hear betrayal breathing through ducts. "Or your consigliere," she said quietly. "Whoever controls your permissions controls your life." Damian's jaw clenched. He pictured Marco's face, the man who carried Eliana to bed when she fell asleep on the couch, the man who laughed softly when Matteo handed him a crayon drawing. Damian's stomach turned, not from grief, but from the cold realization that affection was the easiest disguise. A soft scrape sounded behind them. Nora froze. Damian lifted the Glock, turning his body so the twins were shielded. Out of the darkness, a man in black tactical gear stepped into the emergency strip's weak light, rifle raised, wolf emblem stitched to his sleeve. His eyes went straight to Mateo. "There you are," the man said, smiling. "Boss wants the boy breathing." Nora moved without hesitation. She shifted closer to Damian, her voice instantly softening to keep the children anchored. "Mateo," she murmured. "Hand on your sister's shoulder." Oh. Mateo's fingers found Eliana's sleeve. Eliana's shaking slowed. Damian felt her small courage like a weight in his arms. The intruder raised his rifle. Nora's compact pistol appeared in her hand like it had been there all along. She fired twice. The first shot took the man's knee. The second punch through his shoulder. He collapsed with a howl, rifle clattering down the corridor. Damian didn't move until Nora kicked the rifle away. "Keep going," she said, breath steady. He's not alone. Above them, the closet panel finally gave. A heavy clang echoed down the shaft, followed by boots striking metal rungs. Someone was climbing down fast. Nora grabbed Damian's sleeve and pulled him toward a side door marked maintenance. She shoved it open. They entered a service hallway that smelled like paint and hot wiring, the kind of ugly corridor luxury buildings hid behind polished walls. "Where does this go?" Damian demanded. "Garage," Nora said. "But the elevator will be dead." She looked at him, eyes sharp. "You'll have to carry them." "I already am," Damian growled. They reached a stairwell door. Nora pushed it open and immediately stepped back. Two more men were coming up the stairs in tactical black, weapons ready. Nora didn't panic. She leaned into the doorway, just enough to fire. One man dropped. The second raised his rifle, but Damian fired once, hitting center mass. The man staggered backward and fell down the steps, his weapon bouncing off concrete. Eliana whimpered. Nora turned her head slightly, voice dropping into lullaby calm again. "Good," she whispered to the children. "Good breathing." Damian stared at her in disbelief. She had just killed men and soothed his daughter in the same breath, like both were ordinary. They ran down 3 flights, boots echoing. At the bottom, the stairwell opened into the underground garage. Emergency lights made the space look greenish and sick. Damian's armored Maybach sat near the far wall, black and massive, the doors locked, the windows opaque. And beside it stood Marco. He wore no tactical gear, just a dark suit and a calm expression, as if this were a business meeting. In one hand, he held a tablet plugged into the Maybach's diagnostics port. In the other, a slim remote. "Boss," Marco called softly. "Put the gun down. The kids don't need to see you like this." Damian's blood went cold. "You did this," he said. Marco's eyes flicked to Mateo, and Damian saw something ugly there. Calculation, not affection. "I prevented chaos," Marco replied. "Rizzy is dying. The city needs him breathing. Your son keeps him breathing." Nora's pistol rose. "Step away," she said, voice crisp. Marco smiled faintly at her, like she was an amusing complication. "Ah," he said. "The nanny." He lifted the remote slightly. One press and the car locks permanently. One press and the cabin floods with suppressant. "Your children sleep. Quietly. Forever, if I choose." Damian's arms tightened around the twins as the garage lights flickered once, and boots thundered at the stairwell door behind them. Marco's thumb hovered over the remote as if it were a pulse he could stop at will. The garage's emergency lights washed his face in green, turning the man Damian had trusted into a stranger with familiar eyes. Behind Damian, the stairwell door shook under a heavy hit, steel groaning. Someone was coming down fast. "Boss," Marco said softly, as if they were alone. "Hand me the boy, and this ends clean." Damian held the twins tighter. "You held my daughter when she cried," he said. "Was that a lie too?" Marco's gaze flicked to Eliana, then away. "That was real," he answered. "So is what's necessary." Nora's pistol stayed trained on Marco's wrist, not his chest. "Remote first," she said. Marco smiled faintly and raised the remote. One press locks the Maybach. Another press floods the cabin with suppressant. Quiet children. Quiet city. His eyes sharpened. "Rizzy breeze." Everyone survives. Mateo's whisper trembled against Damian's collar. 1-2. Eliana clutched him hard, trying not to scream. Damian's mind went cold and organized. Marco had the remote. The breach team had the stairwell. The ramp exit would be covered. The private elevator would be dead. He had seconds, and the cost of the wrong second was his son. Nora moved first. She bent, scooped the broken tablet cable from the floor, and whipped it across the garage like a lash. The connector struck Marco's knuckles. The remote jolted in his grip. Marco swore and lifted his hand instinctively. That instinct opened a gap. Nora lunged, slamming her shoulder into Marco's forearm and twisting down. The remote slipped free and skittered across the wet concrete. Marco fought hard, grabbing for her throat, but Nora's elbow drove up under his jaw and snapped his head back. Damian stepped in and crushed the remote under his heel. Plastic cracked. Marco froze, shock flashing across his face like pain. Then the stairwell door blew inward. Two men in tactical black spilled into the garage, rifles up, eyes hunting the child. Their muzzles found Damian. Nora pivoted and fired twice, crisp and controlled. One man dropped. The second fired, bullets hammering the Maybach's armor door with metallic thuds. Damian ducked, turning his body so the twins were shielded behind the car's engine block. Inside, Nora snapped. Now. Damian yanked open the rear door and shoved the twins into the back seat. Down, he ordered. Cover your ears. Oh. Mateo dragged Eliana low, their heads disappearing beneath the window line. Nora stepped into the stairwell threshold and fired 3 more shots. The second intruder fell. More boots thundered above, but the men hesitated now, pinned by a woman who shot like she'd trained for this exact hallway. Damian slid into the driver's seat. The Maybach's ignition responded immediately, the V12 purring like an animal that had been waiting. He threw it into gear. Marco staggered, clutching his bruised wrist, eyes wild. You can't outrun this, he rasped. Rizzy already has the doctor. He already has the room. Damian's hands tightened on the wheel. Then I'm going to burn the room, he said. Nora climbed into the passenger seat, breath hard, blood bright at her lip from where Marco's head had clipped her. Don't take the ramp, she said. They'll box you. How? Damian demanded, turning toward the far wall. Nora pointed to a reinforced service gate marked deliveries. Manual lift, she said. Old wiring. Not on the network. Gunfire cracked behind them. Bullets pinged off rear armor. Damian gunned the engine and shot across the garage, tires screaming on slick concrete. He slammed his thumb onto the manual switch as they approached. The steel gate began to rise, grinding slowly, painfully. Too slow, Damian hissed. Nora leaned out her window, aimed once, and shattered the stairwell light with a single shot. Darkness swallowed the shooters. Their next burst of gunfire went wild, tracers sparking off pillars. The gate cleared enough. Damian punched the throttle and the Maybach surged through, scraping metal, sparks spraying along the roofline. The gate slammed down behind them with a crash that felt like a door being locked on the past. They burst into the rain-swept street. Damian didn't head for any safe house his men knew. He drove like the city was hostile territory, choosing turns that cameras wouldn't expect, weaving through quiet intersections and sleeping wealth. In the back seat, Eliana's sobs softened into hiccuping breaths. Mateo whispered numbers into her hair, stubbornly keeping the lighthouse alive. Damian glanced in the mirror once and felt his chest tighten at the sight of their small heads pressed together. Nora wiped her mouth. Marco was a tool, she said quietly. Not the mind. Damian's jaw flexed. Then name the mind. Nora's eyes went distant, listening to something beyond the car. Your consigliere, she said. The one who signs your trust paperwork and runs your legitimate companies. Damian felt the name like a bruise pressed too hard. Salvatore Bellini, he whispered. Nora nodded. He sold your permissions, she said. He sold your cameras. He sold your garage. And he sold your son to keep an old king breathing. Damian's grip tightened. Where is Rizzy? Nora's voice dropped. Pier 9, she said. Under your fish warehouse. A clinic suite built for extraction. He wants Mateo's marrow before dawn. Silence filled the car, heavy and absolute. Damian drove harder, Wipers beating time. He didn't speak until the skyline shifted and the Maybach descended into a private underground garage registered under a dead company Sophia had insisted he keep. The doors sealed behind them. Damian killed the engine. The sudden quiet was deafening. From the back seat, Mateo's whisper rose, clearer than it had been in months. Papa, he asked, are we safe now? Damian closed his eyes for one breath, then opened them with cold clarity. For this minute, he said softly. Yes. He turned to Nora in the dim cabin. Then we take our house back, he said. Nora's gaze hardened. And then we end Rizzy. Tonight. Damian carried Mateo and Eliana out of the Maybach and into the hidden penthouse like he was carrying the last pieces of his life that still had warmth. The elevator rose in silence, the private lift humming behind steel walls that didn't connect to any building network. Sophia had insisted on it after the first time Volkov's men followed Damian home. Damian had called it paranoia. Tonight it was oxygen. Inside, the penthouse was brutalist and bare. Concrete, glass, black leather, no family photos, no soft edges. A place designed to be forgotten. Damian laid the twins on the wide guest bed and kept his hands on them for a moment longer than necessary, feeling their pulses, their breathing, the proof that they were still here. Eliana's eyes fluttered open. Papa, she whispered, voice thin. Are we burning? No, Damian said, forcing his tone gentle. Not here. He brushed damp hair off her forehead and kissed at once, quick and sure. Listen to me. You're safe in this room. Mateo didn't speak. He watched Damian with quiet, exhausted focus, then looked past him toward Nora standing in the doorway. Mateo's fingers tightened on his sister's sleeve. Nora stepped in slowly, careful not to look like she was taking over. Her calm filled space without stealing it. I'm going to lock this room, she told the twins softly. It's a special door. It listens only to me and your father. Mateo's lips moved in a whisper. Count. Yes, Nora said. You can count. You can sleep. Storm's gone for now. Damian watched his son absorb the words like medicine. It made something ache inside him. He turned away before it could break his face. He followed Nora into the living room and shut the door behind them. Only then did the night hit him fully. His home breached, his guards dead, his head of security betraying him, his children used as currency. Damian's voice came out low. Tell me everything, he demanded. No. Nora sat on the edge of the sofa with controlled exhaustion, pressing a fresh gauze pad to her lip. The cut at her mouth was small, but it had bled enough to stain her collar. She looked at Damian with eyes that didn't ask permission to speak truth. They targeted Mateo, she said. Not because of you. Because of what he carries. Damian's jaw flexed. The intruder said marrow. Nora nodded once. Gianluca Rizzi is dying, she said. Leukemia. Late stage. His body is failing. He's running out of time, and men like him don't accept that. Damian's stomach tightened. Rizzi's name belonged to old North End power, the kind Damian's father once served before Damian ripped the city into a new shape. Why my son? Damian asked, though he already knew the answer was going to hurt. Nora's voice stayed clinical, controlled. Your wife had a rare blood type, she said. Mateo inherited it. Rizzi's doctor needs a match for transfusions, and the marrow gives him months. Maybe more. Enough to keep his counsel intact. Damian's hands curled into fists. So my child becomes his life support. Yes, Nora said simply. And Marco sold the door, because someone above Marco sold the plan. Damian paced once, then stopped. Salvatore, he said, tasting the name like acid. Nora met his gaze. Salvatore Bellini, she confirmed. Your consigliere. He's been cleaning your books for years. He's also been paying Rizzi's medical suppliers through shell companies you think are yours. Damian's anger sharpened into something colder. Proof, he demanded. Nora reached under her cardigan and pulled out a slim flash drive sealed in black rubber. She set it on the glass table like a verdict. I pulled it from Marco's tablet port when he wasn't looking, she said. Transfer logs, admin access stamps, the override key that killed your panic room. Damian stared at the drive. He didn't touch it. You planned for this, he said, voice tight. You came here prepared. Nora's gaze flicked toward the guest room door. I came here for the children, she said. Your wife wanted a guardian in the nursery. She was trying to keep the war from reaching them. I was supposed to be invisible. And you weren't, Damian said. Nora's mouth tightened. Because your people weren't loyal, she replied. And because Rizzy doesn't tolerate unknown variables. He saw me as a threat, so he escalated. Damian leaned close, voice low. Who are you, Nora? For the first time, hesitation flickered across her face, not fear, but calculation about cost. Then she exhaled. Nora Lane is my working name, she said. The agency you hired isn't a nanny agency. It's a protection network for children of high-risk families. Cartels, politicians, organized crime. Her eyes stayed steady. My job is to keep kids alive when their parents' enemies stop having rules. Damian's chest tightened. So you can kill, he said. I can, Nora replied. But I don't come here to kill. I come here so children don't die screaming. Silence filled the penthouse, heavy as stone. Damian finally picked up the flash drive and closed his fist around it. Pier 9, he said. We go now. Nora shook her head once. Not yet, she replied. Rizzy expects you to run at him in rage. He expects your grief to make you sloppy. Her voice turned sharp. We need two things, a map and a trap. Damian's eyes narrowed. Explain. Nora stood, stepping close enough that Damian could smell rain on her skin and faint antiseptic from the warehouse. First, she said, we secure the twins. Full lockdown. No staff. No contact. Second, we call your clean team. People Salvatore doesn't control. Third, we go to Pier 9 and we end the clinic. Damian's jaw tightened. And Salvatore? Nora's gaze hardened. Salvatore will move when he learns Rizzy is threatened, she said. He'll try to secure Matteo again. Or he'll try to erase his trail by killing you. Either way, he exposes himself. Damian stared at her for a beat. Then he nodded once, decision settling into place. I'll call Rosa, he said, naming the fixer Sophia had trusted before Damian learned to trust no one. Nora nodded. Do it, she said. And Damian, she paused then added quietly, when this turns ugly, don't look away from your children's faces. Don't let revenge become your religion. They need you human. Damian's eyes went dark. They needed me human 8 months ago, he said. Tonight they needed me lethal. Nora didn't argue. She just held his gaze. Beat both, she said. Damian took one breath and keyed Rosa's secure number. When she answered, he didn't waste words. I need you, he said. No. And bring men who don't pray to Salvatore Bellini. Nora turned toward the guest room door, her voice dropping into warmth again, as if it was another weapon. I'll check the twins, she said softly. Damian watched her walk away and felt, with cold clarity, that the night had done something irreversible. His empire was compromised. His children were hunted. And the woman he hired to calm screams was the only person in his world who had stayed steady when everything else fell apart. Rosa arrived within 20 minutes because she understood what urgency sounded like when Damian Morello spoke it. 2 SUVs rolled into the private garage below the penthouse without headlights, without noise. 4 men stepped out first, suits hiding armor, faces blank. Rosa followed, dark hair pinned tight, eyes scanning like she was counting exits. She looked at Damian and didn't ask what happened. She looked at Nora and understood enough to adjust her stance. Kids, Rosa asked simply. Sleeping, Nora replied. Locked in. No outside access. Rosa nodded once. Good, she said. Now tell me who we're killing. Rizzy, Damian said. And Salvatore Bellini. Rosa's eyebrows lifted slightly. That's a big fire, she murmured. It started in my nursery, Damian replied. Rosa didn't smile, but something in her eyes hardened into approval. Then we put it out at the source, she said. They moved fast. Nora wrote a code on a scrap of paper and pressed it into Rosa's hand. If anything happens, she said, this opens the guest room lock. The children answer only to you or Damian. No one else. Rosa held Nora's gaze for a beat, then nodded, acknowledging the gravity of the request. Understood, she said. Damian checked his Glock, then a second weapon. He didn't speak about grief or Sophia or how the city had eaten his wife and tried to eat his son. He spoke only about routes. Pier 9 was his property on paper, but Nora's flash drive proved he didn't own the permissions anymore. Nora had already mapped the access points. She led them through an approach that avoided the main road, slipping into the harbor district as the sky began to pale. The fish warehouse looked asleep from the outside. Dark windows, chain-link fence, silent loading bay. Inside, Damian knew. White tile and machines hummed under concrete, waiting for a child's blood. Nora touched Damian's forearm once before they entered. "You're going to see things down there," she whispered. "Don't let them make you reckless." Damian's voice was quiet and lethal. "I'm already reckless," he said. "I just aim it now." They breached through the side entrance with Rose's men clearing corners. The warehouse smelled of bleach and old salt. Nora didn't hesitate. She moved to the floor plate seam and pressed, listening, then swiped the hidden reader with a keycard she'd stolen earlier. The hatch released with a hiss. Cold, sterile air rose like a warning. They descended into the clinic corridor, weapons up. The cameras tracked them, but Nora had already clipped a device into the hub. The feeds looped into silence. The underworld could watch later, when it was too late. At the end of the corridor, the medical suite waited. Bright, white, humming. Damian stepped inside and felt his stomach turn with rage. Gianluca Rizzi lay in a motorized bed, skin yellow, eyes sharp, tubes in his arm, filtration machine pulsing like an unnatural heartbeat. He looked smaller than the legends, but legends didn't need size. They needed permission. Rizzi had lived on permission for decades. He smiled when he saw Damian. "Morello," he rasped. "You came like a good son." Damian raised his gun. "You sent men into my child's room," he said. "You don't get to speak." Rizzi's gaze slid to Nora. "And you brought the nanny," he murmured, amused. Sophia's last insult. Nora didn't flinch. "Your time is over," she said. Rizzi coughed, a wet sound. "Time is a currency," he replied. "And your boy is rich." Damian stepped closer until the muzzle hovered at Rizzi's sternum. "No," Damian said softly. "He's not currency. He's my son." Rizzi's eyes gleamed. "Then you understand," he whispered. "A father for an heir. An old king for a young prince. History repeats." Damian's voice went colder. "History ends," he said. Rizzi lifted a trembling hand and pointed toward a stainless tray. "You think killing me stops it," he rasped. "It doesn't. The council will come for you. They will come for your children. Salvatore will guide them right to your door." He smiled. "Because Salvatore belongs to the old world. You're just renting space in it." Rosa's men tightened their grip, ready to fire. Nora's eyes narrowed sharply at the mention of Salvatore, as if she could hear movement in another room. Then Nora's earpiece crackled. Rosa's voice came through, clipped and urgent. "We have movement," she said. "Penthouse garage. Unknown vehicle. Someone is trying to access the lift." Damian's blood turned to ice. "Salvatore," he breathed. Rizzi's smile widened, satisfied. "Choose," he whispered. "Kill me, and your children die upstairs. Rush home, and I take your boy later. You cannot be in two places at once." Nora stepped forward, calm returning like armor. "Yes, we can," she said softly. Rizzi's eyes sharpened. "Oh." Nora looked at Damian. "Rosa has the code," she said. "The kids are locked. The lift is sealed. Salvatore can't get to them unless he has you." Her gaze turned colder. "He's using the attempt to pull you off me." Damian's jaw flexed. "You're sure?" Nora nodded once. "Finish this," she said. Rizzi opened his mouth to speak again, but Damian didn't give him the breath. Damian fired once. The sound was small in the sterile room, but it ended a generation. The monitor shrieked into a flatline. Rizzi's eyes went wide, then empty. Damian didn't look at the body. He turned to Nora. "Now, Salvatore," he said. Nora's gaze stayed steady. "Now, Salvatore," she agreed. They left the clinic like a storm leaving a ruined shore, fast, controlled, not pausing to admire damage. Rosa's men cleared the corridor, while Nora disabled the hub and pulled her device free, leaving the cameras blind and the story behind them unfinished for anyone who tried to investigate. Damian didn't care about stories. He cared about whether his children would wake up and find air. On the drive back, the city felt sharper as if dawn had teeth. Damian's phone stayed pressed to his ear, Rosa's voice steady on the line. "He's in the garage," she reported. Bellini himself. He tried a clean entry with a fake service badge. "My men pinned him. He keeps asking for you by name." Damian's jaw tightened. "Keep him breathing," he said. "But make sure he understands that is mercy, not safety." When the convoy reached the penthouse garage, Salvatore Bellini was on his knees between two SUVs, hands zip-tied, suit wrinkled, face pale with rage disguised as dignity. He looked up at Damian like he still believed words could buy outcomes. "Damian," Salvatore said, voice tight. "This is a misunderstanding." Damian stepped closer and looked down at him. He didn't raise his gun. He didn't shout. That calm was what finally cracked Salvatore's mask. "You sold my security," Damian said softly. "You sold my son." Salvatore's jaw worked. "I protected the city," he snapped, trying to reach for conviction. "Rizzi alive meant stability. You think you're saving your children? You're condemning them. The council will come. Volkov will come. Every crew will come because you broke the balance." Damian crouched until they were eye level. "My wife is dead because of balance," he said quietly. "My children scream at 3 a.m. because of balance. So don't preach it to me." Salvatore's eyes flicked past Damian to Nora as she stepped out of the SUV. Salvatore's expression sharpened with accusation. He hissed. "She's the poison. She turned you into a sentimental fool." Nora didn't flinch. She walked closer, her bandage stark against her dark hair, and looked at Salvatore like he was a disease she'd already diagnosed. "No," she said calmly. "I showed him what you did. That's not poison. That's light." Salvatore's lips curled. "You're a nanny," he sneered. "You don't understand what men like us carry." Nora's voice stayed even. "I understand children," she replied. "And I understand that you use them as tools." Damian stood, decision settling like stone. "Take him," he told Rosa. Salvatore's breath caught. "Wait, Damian, listen." Rosa's men hauled him up and shoved him into the SUV without ceremony. The garage door closed. The underworld lost another name. Upstairs, the guest room door opened the moment Damian pressed his thumb to the lock. Matteo and Eliana were awake, sitting close together, eyes still heavy, but calmer than they had been in months. Eliana slid off the bed and ran to Damian. He caught her and held her until the trembling in her small shoulders eased. Matteo approached slower, gaze fixed on Damian's face. His voice came out hoarse but clear. "Bad men gone." Damian crouched and met his son's eyes. "The ones who came into our home are gone," he said. "And the one who sent them is gone too." Matteo swallowed hard. "No more 3, he whispered. Damian didn't lie. He didn't promise a fantasy. He promised presence. "If you wake at 3, he said softly, "you will never wake alone. I come. Nora comes. The door stays locked, and the light stays on." Matteo's shoulders lowered by a fraction. Eliana reached for her brother's sleeve. He held it, steadying her without thinking. Damian watched the small gesture and felt something in his chest loosen, a knot he hadn't been able to untie since Sophia's death. Nora stood in the doorway, quiet, giving the family space the way a professional should. But she couldn't hide the exhaustion now. Her breathing was controlled but tight. Her hands were bruised. The calm she wore had weight. Damian walked to her after the twins settled back onto the bed. He stopped close enough that the air between them felt charged with everything they hadn't said. "You saved them," Damian said. Nora's voice stayed cautious. "I did my job," she replied. "No," Damian said quietly. "You did more than that." His gaze held hers, unwavering. "You stood in the nursery with blood on your hands and softness in your voice. You protected their bodies and their minds." Nora's throat moved as she swallowed. "That was the mandate," she said. Damian nodded once. "Then hear mine," he said. "You're not staff. You're not help. You're family to them now, whether you want the word or not." Nora's eyes narrowed slightly. "Family is a dangerous word," she said. Damian didn't argue. "So choose a safer one," he replied. "Stay." Nora looked past him to the twins, to Eliana's fingers still curled around Matteo's sleeve, to Mateo's lips moving in a quiet count that was now more habit than panic. Her expression softened by a fraction. "I'll stay," she said. "On conditions." Damian's voice was steady. "Name them." "No more pretending," Nora replied. "Not with me. Not with them. You don't get to be a king at night and a father in daylight. You integrate or you lose them anyway." Damian exhaled slowly. "Agreed," he said. Nora held his gaze another second. "And when they wake at 3, she added quietly, you go to them. Not cameras. Not guards. You." Damian's chest tightened. "I will," he said. Outside, Boston would wake to rumors. Rizzy dead, Volkov silent, Bellini vanished. The old balance cracking. The council recalculating. A new fear spreading through rooms where men used to speak Damian's name with condescension. Inside the penthouse, Mateo shifted, half asleep, and whispered, "Papa." Damian turned instantly. "I'm here," he said. The screaming at 3 a.m. didn't vanish in a single night. Trauma didn't obey bullets. But the house did change. Not because Damian became softer. Because he became present. Because Nora stayed. Because the children learned that when fear returned, someone would always answer. And in the underworld, a new rule took root, simple and absolute. The Morello children were not leverage. They were the line that ended empires.